Well, thank you very much everyone for coming here tonight for the artist talk and for the finished art. We have Nicole here, and she's a wonderful artist. She's the senior lecturer at COFA. She is working in a very, very immaculate and very precise way. She is like this in life as well. It's really lovely to see how someone's life becomes a meditation, an expression, a living meditation. I call them living meditations because they are so beautifully put together in such a way that in the beginning I had no idea that each line of the fabric is actually separate. And the assemblance of it, the collaging of it, the bonding of it, you will tell us all about it, how you do this, and where you get the patience from to do that, and how you assemble them. And particularly this one is an interesting piece. It is a camouflage taking reference to the military, but at the same time at a rave party in Manly. And you tell us also all about that. To give a little bit of a background, how you get the idea to assemble something like this, and the work it takes, and the time it takes to put all of that together in the way you've done it, particularly in that piece, because that's outstanding and very, very different to those frameworks that you can see here, and also to the poles. So I'd like to pass on to Nicole. Thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm certainly not giving a long talk, but you know, and Connie's nearly said it all anyway, much better than I can, I think. It's great to see you. Mainly, you know, all the work is that you see here is fabric. It's all made of fabric. A lot of it comes from, I suppose I've always really loved history. That's been my big love. But fabric would be another area that I worked with a material like paint skins on floors. And they were, when they came off, I mean, they're very big works that look exactly like wood, and they have a lot of history and information in the floor. And the effect of them is very much like fabric, the way the works used to hang, because they hang freely. So for me, moving to fabric, was quite a natural thing, although it didn't happen very quickly.
And so with other words, you painted first. You did paint first.
I did paint, but these were again they were like floor works that lifted the history that had gone into a floor. It was like a sewing machine factory that had a lot of scars and paints and traces and oils and fabric and needles and all these sort of things that the process that I used sort of captured those things as well as the actual texture and colours of the wood.
So can I just repeat that? So because I don't know that word.
No.
So did you apply that so it became a relief and then you hung that, or was that a floor piece?
It was a piece that it had many, you know, installations, hangings, floor works, sculptural works. So it was, you know, some people called it like experimental painting, conceptual painting, and it was very early on, like in the beginning of the 90s, that sort of thing. And it was work that, imagine you painted this floor, but you wouldn't because it's so clean, and then you peel it back, and you get this other picture comes out.
Like a relief.
Yeah, like a bit like a cast or a relief or something like that. And anyway, then I had a studio. I've had different studios, and my studio is in reverse garbage. Not in, I shouldn't say that. I spent a lot of time there. In the Addison Road Centre, where reverse garbage is, and I used to spend a lot of time there and started collecting fabrics. And just seeing this amazing, because I used to get amazing drops from all of the samples and swatches and wonderful things that were Japanese, Italian, German, you know, all the best fabrics. Sometimes huge pieces, sometimes small pieces. And I loved it, and I could see a connection with the work I'd been doing before, because it contained the you know, the traces of other people, people's lives, design, industrial processes, things like that. So it became a social, you know, a way of continuing this social connection with material and a society on a very broad scale, because all these fabrics, you know, they come from everywhere, and so I got pretty entranced by them, and you know, I have a huge collection of things, amazing things.
How do you know what to choose from this huge ocean of collection of fabrics? Do you go like this, minimal, and
it changes. Annie can tell you, she's seen me do it over many years. Just a whole range of things, and also lots of linen. I loved linen initially because linen is the oldest fabric, so linen is like a touchstone right back to the beginning of weaving, hand weaving, and looms.
I'm wearing one today.
Of making these amazing fabrics. But for me, I never really enjoyed the process of actually painting and mixing colour. It was never something I enjoyed. And you know, we were talking to Virginia Coventry the other day, who can quite happily, you know, mix a colour for sort of three days or something before she gets the right colour. So, but I'm not, you know, my patience is in another area. It's not in that area. So, for me, this area where you actually find colour is wonderful, because it you know, moves sideways from that process or the historical process of painting, fine art painting, that I'd always moved away from, and moved to more experimental ways of painting from a very early time.
So say, for instance, you have this work in mind and this work, and are you working parallel, or is it after each other, or are you starting to pile up fabrics and then they sort of become the work, and then you have the next process where you start to get down onto the nitty-gritties and
Yes. I think I've always worked with the idea of history, though, and traces of history and different histories, and how do you reveal different histories that aren't in your face or aren't obvious ones. So, for example, you know, that work over there is all comes from very cheap sheeting and doona fabric, that kind of thing, and I use like an archaeological process of not putting things back together, but actually dismantling things. That I love doing that more than putting things back together in the classical way of looking at architecture. So that is the back of different fabrics that are quite cheaply printed fabrics, cottons. And I've used the back of them, and I've dismantled them and reorganised them. And I often work linen through them as well, like Belgian linen, because it's like a sort of touchstone again with fine art painting. And I have sort of jokes and ways of working when I'm thinking about pieces, like calling this one and this one of this series. And this series went back earlier when I showed at James Dorahay, called Old Linen, and then the colour. And the old linen refers to, you know, a few different things, like the age of the linen being a really old fabric, but also old linen being, you know, the traditional kind of painting as being a very old thing, but also a kind of a jokey thing in that one of being like the sheets and the pillowcases and doona covers and things like that, you know, it's being old linen.
Yeah, but if you look at it, if you look at it in that way, then you have absolutely the quality to turn something that is lost its value into something to make that very valuable. Because the way you assembled it, the way you lined it up, now the whole way you assemble it, you make it look so expensive, so elegant, so isn't it?
Yes. Indeed.
You would never think that this is old, cheap linen, the way you described it. My God, you know, it made it look so, they are very expensive textiles. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, democracy of
the democracy of fabrics, yes. And the strips are all individually made. I suppose when you look, people have said when you look at something like that,
I mean that's a masterpiece. Have a look at it later on. It's just you just look at the little strips.
You can't necessarily see
how the
construction is.
Yeah, you can't see it.
But then something like this one here, and this goes back to you know, the floor works that I was telling you about, where I used to pull up from the floor, where you're getting these traces of where I put linen onto something else and torn it off in this part and here, so that you're working, or what I'm trying to do is to work against any kind of perfection, because perfection to me is something that you have to break, you have to find a way of intervening with it so that you get another story coming through. And I don't ever sort of think of my works as being narratives. They're not narratives in that sense, but they tell different stories in the terms of the fabric, the materials, the histories, the different histories of, like my history, the histories of the different kinds of fabrics that are actually used and what's actually happened to those fabrics. So,
well, the feedback of people visiting the exhibition related it straight away to frescoes. People were really reminded on frescoes with this particular work, because it just looks so old. And when you say they don't tell a narrative, I completely disagree, because they really do. And they do. Oh, they say a lot, don't they? Yes. I mean, over there, this is such a happy piece, even though it's in a setting of greyness, and you could have done that in London. rainy day work, but it has some happiness in it and some hope in it, something to look forward. There's always something there to spark it up and to bring life into it, and that's a happy one anyway, but it's got the old touch. There is something happening. When I look at this, I think of Rome. I don't know why.
Because I've been there so much that I don't directly think about things like that in my work, you know, about floors or walls or things like that now. I work very much with the material and let it come through the material.
Well, tell us a bit about this. There's a little cheeky bugger here,
yeah.
Because that is a brick case, that there's something poking through here.
This is a sort of the last piece I did. It was a more whimsical piece, which you can probably see. Again, I found cushion cover, pillow cover, Tommy Hilfiger designed pillowcase that I found it in, again, reverse garbage. But what was great for me was not that it was perfect, but it actually had this slice cut out of it. And often when you find samples and swatches, they've been sliced, or they've been cut, or they've been torn in some way. And that's terrific, I think, because it's a very expressive thing, and it's been done by somebody else in a way that you couldn't, or I couldn't do it myself. So it had this, you know, it's got the other side, but it had this cutout. And
but is that
I
again assembled? Yeah,
I filled it.
Yeah, and that they're all different.
This was a piece of patchworky bits of patchwork that I actually found, but then
I
added
that. That looks like a Pucci. Yeah.
I added the Pucci, which just.
Oh, it is it?
No, I don't think so. It's a piece of long cotton, actually.
It does look very Pucci-ish.
And you know that Patch Up sort of home series, so it's like a home is this, you know, perfect place where everything's sort of happy and smooth and settled. But the reality is that there's all these other things that happen, you know, in homes or in these, where you have these beautiful furnishings and things like that. There's the rough bits, the bits that don't necessarily go smoothly and have to be worked on and patched in certain ways. So it's away from perfection. And it's looking at the consumer product, I suppose, in a way that it will never be a perfect thing. It will always have imperfections, and it's the imperfections that tell a story. And
that is my marine piece. I always see that. You know, it looks like marina, and there's a sailing boat. It's got such a funny narrative of marina. Not the ocean, or it's just got something that reminds me of.
Nautical.
Yeah, nautical.
I can see what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, let's come to the next and last one. Which are my favourites. They're really beautiful. The sticks, the poles, and each one again are different fabrics. Can you imagine the immense patience? It's amazing. Tell us a little bit about that one.
I suppose I've only got the patience for this sort of work because I adore the fabric, and I adore putting the fabric together. Having that, it allows you to keep going with something that you very happily do for a long time. So I think, as Connie said, it becomes quite meditative, even though it's also quite exasperating at times as well. But these poles, not these poles, but just poles in my work, when I started to use fabric, came in from the beginning because the way I've been working and what I've been interested in, I've collected carpets a long time ago, carpets that are hand-done, homemade between the wars, the First and Second World Wars, and I've always been interested in these rugs and carpets and things. In fact, my father made some and my mother made some. And so what happened was I'd always loved the idea of portability and what that meant in terms of being global and travelling and moving around. Meant that the carpet thing meant you could always roll your carpet up and you could take it with you. And if you had your carpet with you, you were pretty right. You had something to sleep on if need be, and you had decoration and you had something from somewhere else. So for me, these they came from the idea of or partly haberdashery rolls, where you get fabric all rolled up, but also that what you've got or what the fabric is again rolled up so that it can be walked away with or taken away. So, but then it has got the other references that come through it, which is, and that's in all of this work, is back to painting and sort of geometric painting, some of it. So there's different things that you could say. People say, did you get this idea from Aboriginal poles? Well, no, I didn't, but I love Aboriginal poles. But if you put these next to, say, Aboriginal poles, you realise that this is about a very different kind of culture. It's about extremely complex culture.
People were commenting on the Carl Wiebke poles, which are very different. They are painted.
Yes, they are similar.
Carl Wiebke from Liverpool Street Gallery.
Yeah, they are similar.
They're very similar.
But he's a painter.
Yes, he's a painter.
They weren't influenced by those, but I have looked at them and I've seen, there's some I saw recently in the MCA that actually have painted things on them as well. So, but these come from also things like soft, because they're sticks, and sticks, you might say, are fighting sticks. So there's the violence of a stick, a pole that can be used to hit somebody. But if you've got soft fabrics on it, it becomes like a soft stick or a soft pole. So I work with that opposition of putting something much more agreeable or soft on something that could be seen as a very warlike fighting thing.
I would like to add to that because I asked Nicole the how-abouts and whereabouts she got the poles from, because they are very easily misunderstood. Everyone can imagine as a broomstick, but this is not a broomstick. And the broomstick would be here, and half the size. Well, I'm just trying to very simply what people think when they come in. Oh, it's just a stick. It's not. This is really a handmade, solid, beautiful stick made out of wood. Very, very difficult to make because of the length and the solidity, and it's very expensive. So it's not just a cheap stick. No, it's also because of its hardwood, and it's very heavy, and the heaviness creates that gravity that they stand on. They don't need any halters or anything to mount them onto something. It was very important because I just come from an architect's office. They're interested in it. And when I talked to the designers yesterday, they thought they're broomsticks. Honestly, I'm not kidding. So I have to master designers. Well, no, they design. They know about furniture. They know about accessories, and they know about the architecture that things go into. But art within architecture is a completely different ballgame. And I do work with a lot of architects and interior architects and designers for many, many years. with different developers. See, the artist, like particularly in the case of Nicole, she made something very valuable out of something that she considered invaluable, or it lost its value because it was old.
Yeah, that's right.
People don't see that, so I have the eye to see the quality, to see what the artist has produced. Most people just see the surface. They think, oh, I can do that, I can sniggle up a few things, you know, bits and pieces and cut them together. People do not understand the craft, the ideas where they come from, to actually even implement your ideas, and then to convince someone to buy into it, like me. You know, I promote the artist. So my duty or my task is, and I love doing that, is to tell people the value of what the artist did, because they don't see that. Yeah, they just don't see that. And that showed it, it proved it, you know, proved it to the... And here we've got a collector who has actually one of the poles.
I think of a pole as magic wands.
Yes, beautiful. Thanks for that position. I also don't see them. I never thought the connotation of violence and fighting. I never had that.
Well, there's
With your
different
pole,
things.
because you were
with
saying
poles.
it's a stick.
You know, it can be a roll of haberdashery. It can be used for so many things. But this one here,
Yeah.
you know, I had it specially made and turned by a woodworker who had to, because you can't buy thick cylinders, so you know, you had to put a lot of wood together and then actually turn it on a...
See, these poles in themselves are a piece of art, aren't they? And then to apply that around what Nicole did. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to get to know what you're doing here, and the sensitivity and sensibility that you put in the work. This is something I respond to very, very well. As you said, what did you say before? A home is something that is settled. I love that. It's settled. But this is also, it's because it's fabric, it creates a beautiful, homely feeling, isn't it? So the feeling of it is it's creating a home altogether. So thanks for all these homes.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Any questions? Yes?
Nicole, I can remember your floor works very well.
Oh, that's good.
They were great. And that's the first thing I thought of when I saw the splotches. Was that actually peeled from the floor? Those,
No, it wasn't. I do it differently. I don't peel from the floor, you know, I peeled from other canvas and things like that, linen and stuff, so it's set up a bit differently. Yeah, no peeling from the floor anymore. But one thing Connie said about this work here, just quickly, is that that's weaving two different activities through it. I tried to create something using camouflage, which is for protection and stealth and war. I tried to create something that was an anti-war piece, but still about protection and stealth. So that work is about, they had the rave parties, not in Manly, but they actually had them in the tunnels in the Middlehead, on the Middlehead site when the military moved out in 2002. The rave party people, and what sort of triggered me off when I did a tour through there was there's one huge room in the tunnels that has the most beautiful drawings in it that were permanent traces of one of these parties, done with like smoke, I think, smoke drawings over the walls and ceilings. And I quite coincidentally got all these rolls of tissue paper rolls from this factory that had shut down in Marrickville that turned up in reverse garbage again, and it's the tissue paper that you use the transfer to get the print on. So all the prints in that are actually hand done using an iron or a heat press from those. So it's sort of weaving that electronic psychedelic sort of idea through the military in the layers. Anyway, that's it. So thanks very much everybody for listening for so long. That's great.
Thank you for your support. Just like to thank everyone for supporting Nicole. Also like to say thank you for doing the recording to Florian, who does all the things in the background of technology, and Phoebe, because she's been very supportive and doing all the PR and everything. So thank you very much and enjoy further drinks and the show. Thank you.
Thanks.